small fries. How many in here are familiar with Dave Ramsey?
Yeah.
And what does Dave say? It's always the little stuff that will kill you because you tend to not pay any attention, and they're not paying any of this attention. The Department of Education is over $80 billion. That's another one that would cut. You know, and we just go down the line like that. Entitlements, they're really not entitlements. Welfare is charity. Who is supposed to do charity? Us, the people, not the government. So that gets cut. But go ahead.
Okay. All right. Going back to the, let me just.
She has to answer the question.
About the balanced budget. Well, number one, in Washington, D.C., we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem.
Amen.
Right. It's just that simple. And I'm going to tell you, growing up, these were the principles that my mother taught us, all 6 of us. It's 5 girls and 1 boy. You live within your means, and it's just that simple.
Yeah.
You do not spend what you do not have. And the fact that we're borrowing from enemies that do not have our best interests just to satisfy immediate goals, immediate political partisan favoritism, have to cease. Let me tell you something. I know I mentioned this earlier in my speech. The time for just trimming around the edges are long gone. If we aren't willing to take bold, and I'm going to use the word radical moves, that's what it's going to take. Now, this fuzzy math about, well, since we didn't spend 15%, we're going to save 3%, these numbers, look, I tell you, I'm working on a PhD, and I don't understand this math. It's weird. It's funny math. The numbers do not add up. We simply need to see what revenues do we take in and don't spend over that.
Exactly.
If I were in charge, I would tell all of my foreign leaders, put your checkbook away. We're not borrowing another red cent.
Yeah.
If we don't control Congress, and we don't control the Senate, and we don't control the White House, we can't win. We can't change it. We don't control the committees. We don't control legislation. So our goal is to control those 3 bodies.
Exactly. Well, you know, but that's true. But also, we have to also pay attention to what's happening in these local elections as well. So we also need to make sure that we put conservatives on county government, county boards, city government, even at the state level. So we need to start making a shift and start looking at every level of government, including.
Well, we did make some major inroads.
We did.
Last election, major inroads.
Exactly. Again, this election will finish with the midterm election starting.
You can't listen to the rhetoric.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
I would like to know where in the Constitution it gives the president the right to hire all these czars.
I've read it, and I haven't been able to find it.
It's right under the part where we can bypass Congress and
Yes,
just go to
that's
war
where it
after
is.
we get international permission.
That's where it is. That's where it is.
Brenda, I have a question.
Yes.
And they may want to cut the tape off of this because I'm going way off the map.
Sure.
But, I mean, it concerns me. I look at you and I see a woman. I see a woman in red, a patriotic, American, God-fearing, loving woman. I look at Zach over here and I see a white, I don't see a white, but I see a man.
Racist.
My point, I want to talk fast because I don't want to take up a lot of time. But look around you. Look around you and see how many black people are here. And we want them involved because they love America just like we do. They're Americans. It sort of ticks me off. I don't hear people going around talking, I'm Irish American, I'm Italian American. But a lot of black people still want to divide. They want to refer to themselves as African/Americans. No, they're American. But how do we get them as passionately involved in what we want them here?
Sure.
But are we doing something? How can we approach them? What are we doing wrong?
Okay.
How can we recruit them?
Sure. First of all, let me mention this. The only people that I see in this room are Americans.
Yes.
I don't see white Americans,
Except for Zach.
Black Americans, African Americans. I see American patriots in this room.
Right.
Amen.
I don't see color other than this red jacket. Let me tell you another thing that has to happen. We have to educate
Yes.
the black community. When I
Yes.
say educate, the Republican Party has a long and rich history of supporting civil rights legislation.
Yeah.
In fact, every piece of civil rights legislation going back to slavery days were Republican initiatives. And every initiative that tried to block abolishing slavery, Fugitive Slave Act, Democratic initiatives. That's what it is. In fact, the long and loved civil rights legislation in the 60s, it was a Republican senator who put that legislation in place. That was who was behind the civil rights legislation. And what I have done successfully in my own family and in my own community, I have been able to educate so many people. The problem, I believe, is that people just don't know. So it's not even about recruiting. It's about telling your story. Long story short, and I tell this everywhere I go, I grew up in the projects of Atlanta, Georgia. I tell that story everywhere I go. And I'm now working on my PhD at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. And what I have learned is that you rely less on the government and more on God and your own drive and initiative. Yes. So what we have to do, and I mean this, the thing that we have to do, and this is what I'm working diligently on, is helping to educate about the history of the Republican Party and the history of the Democratic Party and the history of our great country. And part of the problem is that our school systems have failed in teaching American history. And what I've read and what I have learned, these aren't secrets. You can go to any major library, any bookseller, any bookstore, and you can find great American history books. And one thing that I'm really excited about, and that is to reform entitlement reform. What entitlements have done is enslave a generation of people. And I'm not telling you something that I read in a book. I'm telling you something I live and something that I know. And until we reform entitlements, forget about cutting the deficit. And the thing that has enslaved an entire generation of people is through handouts. And that has to stop. Because if you're telling me that people of color cannot take care of their families, cannot take care of their children, cannot provide for their own household, then you're telling me that people of color are inferior. And I reject that flag. Because we're all created in the image of God. And what I am trying to do, and what I have done successfully, is to show how these entitlements do nothing but enslave people.
Well, as a follow-up very quickly, why does Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, why are they still so hell-bent on dividing and keeping their own people suppressed?
Let me say something. As long as somebody is oppressed, somebody is benefiting. It's just that simple. And when I go out and I speak, I'm not coming with another social policy on this arm and another entitlement on that arm. I'm coming to say, enough is enough. Because my family, my mother's family, my mother comes from a family of 14 siblings. My grandparents, they separated at death. 14 children. In Mississippi, that's where my family is from. Southern Mississippi, the height of racism. But my grandfather, he was able to break down every barrier.
Yeah.
He was a property owner. He was a Christian.
Amen.
And he taught my mother and all of my aunts and uncles, you can do and be anything that you want to be. And that's the message that I'm speaking across this great state of Tennessee. I've already contacted Pastor Bryant.
Yeah.
I have contacted him,
Yeah.
but he's busy traveling.
Yeah, I know.
He's busy traveling. He's
But
busy traveling.
if we could get whites and blacks to see that movie.
But we need to let Americans see that movie.
That's right.
That's what we need to see.
Yeah.
American patriots see that movie.
Yeah.
Not white America, not black America, not Hispanic America. Patriot Americans
That's
see
right.
that movie. Yes.
Yeah.
Got a question for both of us. Did you?
Before you go on, let me just say that I would encourage you guys to, everybody heard of David Barton?
Yes.
Yeah.
David Barton has a book, it's called Setting the Record Straight. And it's and what you'll see is that you'll see the truth. And so as I've been traveling the campaign trail through Tennessee, and I'm talking to people, I challenge people across the state, Democrat, Republican, Independent.
Yeah.
And they say, well, the Democrats are for the common people. I said, the Democrats are for slavery. And they said, well, wait, no, that's not right. I said, well, you don't know your history. 1808, it was required by the Constitution to have a vote. And slavery was abolished in 1808. In 1820, that's with the slave trade coming on. In 1820, that's when they then said, okay, the Northwest Territories had to agree in order to be part of the United States, could no longer participate in slavery. So we were making progress. It wasn't, in 1820 is when most of our founding fathers died, were dead, right? So you had 1836 and onward, now the push started going the other way. And in 1847 is when you had, or 1857 is when you had the Dred Scott decision. And the Dred Scott decision, Democrat-controlled Supreme Court said that black people were not persons.
Yeah.
What do we hear today? What do we hear today? A fetus, a baby inside a woman is not a human life, is not a person. It's no different. You see, those that stand for equality will always stand for equality. And the Republican Party has been rich with that history. In fact, there was a U.S. Senator that in 1854, when the Republican Party was founded, was beaten on the Senate floor, and it took him 3 years to recover. During that time, we know that whites and blacks stood together, and they were hung together, and they were skinned alive together. And what we have to do is, like Brenda was saying, is we're Americans, and we stand for equality. When we treat everybody equal, we don't have to worry about the handouts, because everybody has that expectation. When we turn our face back to God, there's already a set of principles there. The problem is we are all looking at the Constitution, if we're looking at it, from a different prism. And that prism, most of the time, is not a biblical prism. And it needs to be. Because without God, the Republic cannot survive.
And we can see that.
So we-
Well, you know the black,
Last question. I'm sorry.
I say the Democrats were the founders of the Ku Klux Klan.
They were.
Okay.
And also you're suppressing the flag.
Yes.
Democrats.
And remember also Senator Byrd,
Yeah.
the longest.
I don't understand what, I guess it's K.
Yes. So, yeah. Yes, sir.
I think an important question to ask both of you, something to consider, is, okay, you know Bob Corker's the establishment candidate. He's going to have the money behind him and everything. there's a potential for you two guys, ladies, you two, to split the vote and put Bob Corker back in there. My question is, if one of y'all see that the other one has a chance of beating Bob Corker and you're hurting the other candidate, will you do what's right for the state of Tennessee and step aside if that candidate is standing on the right purpose, the Constitution, and support that other candidate so we can beat Bob Corker?
I know in 2006, because I was here in Tennessee, in 2006 we know that Ed Bryant and Van Hillary were running against Bob Corker. And we know that Ed Bryant was the most conservative. Van Hillary was also conservative. But they split, exactly what you just said, they split that vote, which put Bob Corker winning the primary. This race is not about me. This race is about our republic. As I said before, I'm not asking you to send me to Washington to build a personal legacy. I'm asking you to send me to protect the American legacy, and that is my full intention. And if it looks like that Brenda can win this race, and she can and she is standing, I'll have to talk to her to make sure that she believes what I believe, that she is a true conservative. I believe that this is bigger than you, and it's bigger than me. And if we don't begin to get the right people up there and fight for the right people, we're lost. And anybody that would stand up here and tell you otherwise is a true politician. And that's not why I'm running. Because I don't know what God's plan is for me. It may be to uplift somebody else. It may be to get you guys focused on God again. How about that?
Amen. Hey, don't you think that one of the big underlying causes for all the crooks that's up there is the non-vote? The people that don't get out and vote. You know, by not voting for either one, it's basically putting stamp approval on the one that's up there. You know what I'm talking about? People need to get out and vote. Right. 20%, that's all that shows up for elections. And then the other 80% are probably bellyaching most of the time. You know, but they won't get out and vote. They got to vote.
Okay. Will you answer?
Yes, the answer to the question is about splitting the votes. I spend less time on what ifs and hypotheticals and things like that. What I try to do is I try to run my race and run it well. And what I have done is I have made a commitment to the people who have supported me that August 2012, after the people of Tennessee cast their vote, is when Brenda Leonard for U.S. Senate then decided which way she's going. And unfortunately, not a day before. Last question.
If either one of you get in office, something, I don't know what goes on, but something happens to people when they get to Washington, D.C.
Term limits.
Oh, yeah.
I support it because I don't want to be there forever. It's simple. Term limits. We should not be there for I believe, no more than 2 terms. And after that, you should get out there and find a real job in the real world.
Yeah.
And pump that $4 gallon gas like Zach and I are doing.
Yeah.
That's what needs to happen. We need term limits. We need people to go there, serve, do their job. Don't get too cozy. Don't get too comfortable, and go out and find a job. Pump that $4 gallon gas. Okay, I think let
me answer your question. So I think here's the answer to your question from my perspective. There are people that once they're elected, they go up there and we hear the jokes about drinking the Kool-Aid. And really, what it is if you look at the candidates, I would say 90% of them have already looked at what they can do to build a personal legacy there. They have things they want to do. They might be for America, but most importantly, it's for them. I'm running not to build a personal legacy. I'm running there to work as hard as I can to protect and defend our nation and the American legacy. And to be frankly honest, the work that has to be done will be wore out in 6 years.